Every moment in life has the potential to be phenomenal. At Amy Boyle Photography, we specialize in capturing those moments, whether it's for your business, a milestone event, or a personal portrait. As the host of the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast, I know the power of storytelling, and I bring that same passion to my photography. Let's create images that celebrate who you are and what you stand for. Visit amyboylephotography.com to schedule your session today. Welcome to the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast. I'm your host, Amy Boyle. Today's guest is the transformative Tonika Lewis-Johnson, a social justice artist who invites us to look more closely, care more deeply, and act more boldly. You may know her from her groundbreaking folded map project, which reimagines how we understand segregation in Chicago. Her current work, including Unblocked Englewood and her powerful new book, Don't Go: Stories of Segregation and How to Disrupt It, challenges all of us to rethink what community and justice really mean. If you've ever wondered how art can move policy or how listening can spark meaningful change, you'll want to stay with us. This is the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast. Welcome to the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast, Tonika. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
I would love it if you could give our audience an introduction to the phenomenal you.
Oh, thank you. Well, I am calling myself these days a social justice artist, but my primary medium is photography. That's the foundation of all of my work. That's what launched me into doing all of the projects that I do. And really, the through line of my work is creating space and educational ways for people to disrupt, tackle, and learn about Chicago's segregation and how it impacts all of our lives today and our personal relationships. And so that's the through line with all of my work. One of my primary projects is Folded Map, which I'm sure we'll get into, but it is a visual representation of Chicago's segregation using its grid map. But yeah, these days I'm just calling myself a social justice artist, although I am also creative executive officer of my own nonprofit, which is named and born out of my Folded Map project, and it's called Folded Map Project Non-for-Profit. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell, but I am a tried and true Chicagoan, born, raised, lived in Chicago, never moved away. That's how somebody could create a project like Folded Map, because I've never left Chicago, and a proud person from Chicago's Southside Englewood neighborhood.
I love the fact that you started off with a social justice artist. When did your love for photography start? And then how did that evolve?
I grew up in a family full of artists. So art was always around me. So unconsciously, I never considered it as an option to not be an artist or have it involved in my life. My grandmother, even though she had a full-time job, obviously, I didn't know her at work. I just knew her at home. She loved music. She would sing. She would watch a lot of musicals. And my uncles, who are pretty much like my brothers, because they're like 7 years and 10 years older than me and significantly younger than my mom. They're illustrators. So, they would be at the kitchen table drawing all the time or drawing while they're watching TV. My mom, she was a poet and a screenwriter. So she would drag me to meetings with her friends after work when they would just talk about scripts, and I would do my homework. And my dad, he is a forever amateur photographer. Like, even to this day, he just constantly takes photos. And so I was just around that. And when I turned like 13 years old, a couple of my grammar school friends knew that, I liked writing poetry, and we were starting high school. And they told me about this program that had just gotten started that they heard of at school called Young Chicago Authors. And it was in its third year at the time. This was 1993. And so they said, you should join this program. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know if I feel like, traveling, because it was in Wicker Park. I was like, I don't know if I feel like traveling on the weekend. I'm already traveling so far to go to school. And then I read that they give you a $2,000 scholarship for college. And I was like, oh, I guess I'll go. So I applied, got accepted. And it was in Young Chicago Authors that they expose you to other mediums that you might be interested in as a writer to kind of, help you understand and enhance storytelling, the creative process, how it's all the same. And so they offered a photography class. And of course, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm interested. My dad always takes photos, and I know how it makes me feel being photographed. So let me just learn how to take some pictures. And so I took a photography class, and I was at 13, 14 years old, and I got addicted so fast that they had to remind me, you still have to write. You still have to do poetry. Like, you can't just only do photography. But I caught the bug real quick and real fast. So majority of my high school years, it was me taking photos of my friends all the time at school, taking pictures in class, like absolutely crazy. But yeah, so that's how it started. And really my love and passion for photography kind of dictated every decision that I made for myself in high school and in college.
Incredible. Similar, I won a camera when I was in middle school for my parents buying the most magazines, I'm sure. But that tool became like the best friend and the confidant and the
Yes.
eyes and the ears and also the words, to your point. I mean, yeah, you still had to write because you're in a writing program, but I'm certain as a photographer myself that those images that you made also stirred up emotions so that you could have further conversations and writing.
Totally. They were the perfect prompts. And what I love about photography so much, especially in that beginning phase, is that it taught me so much about myself, because a lot of people think, oh, as a photographer, you're documenting the world as it is. And, but for me, it's really shows you, it's the perfect medium to show you what you pay attention to. And that's what I love the most. Like, I didn't realize how much I pay attention to, people, my friends, quiet moments. Like, I learned so much about myself by taking photos. And so I think that's just a beautiful part of photography as well. But I wanted to ask you, do you remember your first camera, like what it was?
Oh,
What was
yeah.
your first?
It's still sitting on my shelf. It's a little Polaroid. The things I collected at the time. I have pictures of like my dog in the backyard under the magnolia tree, poorly exposed, but there she is and like a million miles away. I'm like, why didn't I get closer? And from there, went through various point and shoots. I was the one that always had it in school, right? There weren't that many kids in high school that brought their cameras with them. Lived a 1 hour photo, that kind of
Oh my
thing.
God, that's so funny. Mine was a Pentax K1000. I had that for 4 years before I was gifted my first Nikon. So I'm a Nikon girly ever
Same.
since. Ever since.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think, part of the fun in having these conversations, especially with photographers and other artists, is like, where did it begin? Because there's so much to be said about those first images and the why, like how you got excited.
Yeah.
So leading into that, from this love of photography, this passion, and like you said, similar to our family here, you can't escape it. You're part of this artist mindset, what have you. When did Folded Map come into play? And can you tell our audience more about what that is for someone who's not from Chicago?
Folded Map is a multimedia art project, and it debuted as an art exhibit at Loyola University Museum of Art. And it is a project that includes portraits, video, and interactive map of Chicago, because it's a project that uses Chicago's unique grid map to pair addresses that are similar but are miles apart, because we have streets that run the full length of the city, and they run in neighborhoods that are racially and economically different, but, have addresses that are literally identical of each other, but they're in the predominantly Black neighborhood. And then you'll have another address that's, identical in a predominantly white neighborhood, miles apart, 15, 13 miles apart. And so Folded Map photographs those addresses, the homes that are similar and on the same street, but then it also photographs the people who live in those homes and brings them together to have a conversation. And I refer to those people as map twins. And I recorded the conversations. And so there's documentation of all of the map twins meeting each other for the first time and getting introduced to each other's neighborhoods and having a conversation about everything. And so that is Folded Map, and people can learn more about it at foldedmapproject.com. But I often joke with people and tell them that the video of the Map twins talking and meeting each other is like social justice reality TV, because it is riveting, because it is, it's a lot of touching moments, but it is also very awkward. And so the idea of bringing people together across racial, economic, and geographic lines really was a seed of an idea from high school for me, because I traversed the many miles that are represented in my Folded Map project at an early age. I was 13 and I lived on Chicago's South Side, which is predominantly Black. And I traveled 15 miles north to the predominantly white neighborhood to go to high school. And the high school was a very diverse, selective enrollment public school that has the largest student body of any public school in Chicago. And the student body is 4,000. So, when you're getting thrown into a school of 4,000 students as a 13-year-old from a segregated city, and this is a diverse school that has kids from all over the city, you learn about race, eventually segregation, about the crazy way in which you learn other people's cultures, which is, sometimes it's through offensive questions. And so I experienced that the entirety of the 4 years I was in high school. And so I always thought about, oh my gosh, this is so fascinating. I met people that I would have never, ever probably met otherwise. And I became friends with people that I would have assumed I couldn't be friends with or would have never met. But then I also thought about, oh my gosh, it would be so great if they could meet my friends that I grew up with on my block. And so the idea of bringing friends together across, the geographic divide of the city, it was always there. I didn't realize it was a reason behind why we were all from different neighborhoods that were racially the same. So, we didn't know about segregation, but by the time we were seniors in high school, we definitely did. So that's pretty much where Folded Map came from, but it would take me 20 years to actually start working on it. It took the 2016 presidential election for me to say, you know what? I'm tired of Chicago getting talked about in this way. It's time for me to start working on this project that I've had an idea of, and I need to do it now. So that was really what motivated me to start working on it.
Fantastic. I would love to know a couple of your favorite surprises from the Map Twins meeting,
I would say for me, it was the realization that there were different realizations at different ages, but ultimately the most important takeaway from my experience that also was reflected in Folded Map is that segregation worked. Like, segregation worked. And if people accepted the fact that segregation worked and we're all affected by it, then it would make it easier to navigate the perceived challenges of disrupting it. And I also realized through Folded Map while doing the project that people that I thought didn't care, because I just thought, oh, me and my social network of friends care about these large systemic issues and how it impacts me and other friends. They're the only ones that care. But through Folded Map, I learned that so many people care who I didn't anticipate, even if they're from over-resourced neighborhoods. They just don't know how to help beyond voting and how to learn more about neighborhoods that essentially they have been told to not go to. And then I also learned that people from predominantly Black neighborhoods in Chicago felt validated by my project. I often got messages of people saying, now I can just give them your project. I can just refer to people to your project when they ask about Chicago or make comments about Chicago, and they appreciate me doing it. So they could have it to defend not only Chicago, but their lived experience. So those are some of the larger takeaways that always sit with me. And
that leads us perfectly into now your book, Don't Go. Right? These are things that if you're told something for your whole life, your family's life, beyond, and you just believe it without seeing, right? It's these things without knowing or going or having that conversation. Could you tell our audience a little bit more about the book and where that is taking the project or even its own other studies?
Yeah, so after Folded Map, I did a few more projects. One was a project called Belonging. That was from the perspective of Black and brown teenagers from Chicago, sharing the locations and stories about them being racially profiled and how it made them feel. And I was really interested in their perspective because especially right after Folded Map, because a lot of people ask, how did you come up with this project? And I was like, oh, well, really from being a teenager riding public transportation. And so it got me thinking about teenagers today and how they feel about their city, questions they have. And so that project was really important to me. And I did another project to kind of explain the history of how my neighborhood, Inglewood, began to struggle with a lot of the issues that it has today, specifically with low home ownership and low income neighborhood. And so as I was thinking about my interest and my body of work and how the through line is disrupting segregation, I really wanted to do a project to invite the perspective of white Chicagoans, to be honest, but in a way that was authentic to their experience and that could help push the conversation forward, as opposed to it feeling like, they have to be educated about segregation, but to share from their perspective all the ways in which they have been impacted by segregation in ways that we don't really talk about when we are talking about segregation, because it is oftentimes, and rightfully so, from the perspective of the population and the neighborhoods most impacted financially by it. But for me, I wanted to also include and invite into the conversation that they're also impacted financially and socially as well. It's just the flip side. And so when I would do presentations about Folded Map, I would often ask the question, raise your hand if you have been told or have heard that Chicago's South Side is dangerous and that you should not go. And everybody would always raise their hand. Everybody would always raise their hand. It doesn't matter if it was a room full of 30 people or 600. I literally asked that question to a room of 600 people, and everybody raised their hand. And that was really powerful to be able to tell all of those people, well, that is also how segregation is perpetuated today. And I am from the neighborhood you're told to not go to. This is what segregation does. It prevents you from meeting people like me. And when I asked a group of young, predominantly white 18-year-olds at Northwestern, because I was doing a freshman orientation, getting them acclimated to, the history of Chicago through my project, and I asked that question and they all raised their hand, it just hit me a little different because they were not that much older than my kids. And I was just like, oh my gosh, they have no idea that advice is rooted in a history of racism. And how long is it going to be before they learn that is not the truth? That 60% of the city is not dangerous and that the neighborhoods you're told to not go to are the Black neighborhoods. I was like, how long before they know that? So that moment really just motivated me to want to create a public discourse about it. So I shared the video of me recording them answering that question on my social media, and a lot of people responded. It caught the attention of the amazing Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Mary Schmidt for the Chicago Tribune, and she wanted to write a piece about it, and she shared her own Don't Go story. And so she wrote a column that went viral. And of course, it was crazy comments on the Chicago Tribune story about it, which fueled me to want to dive deeper into this. And so I went back to my social media and told people, email me your Don't Go stories. And within a couple of weeks, close to like 75, 80 people emailed. And the book, Don't Go, is a compilation of those stories that are from me and my co-author, Dr. Maria Creason, interviewing them, 30 of them during the pandemic. And so it's really genuine, authentic, honest, vulnerable stories from Chicagoans, some who are transplants, most who are white, some who are non-white, but from the neighborhoods that people are told to not go to, and everybody just sharing their feelings about it and what they learned about themselves and about race. And so that is the latest project, Don't Go, that I'm really excited to be able to arm people with. So when they run into people saying crazy stuff about Chicago, you can just make sure you have the book and hit them upside the head with it and say, you read this. But yeah, it was really important for me to create another tool for people to use, not only to learn, but also to think of solutions. Because it's one thing to do projects that show the problem and the history behind the problem. But me being a perpetual problem solver, I also wanted people to imagine solutions. And whether it's in your own personal life or if you're a teacher educating students, because really it's knowledge and education that will get us to the world that we want to have. And that is why, this current presidential administration is doing what it needs to do to silence specific histories, because knowledge sounds cheesy, but knowledge is power. Because the more you know, the more you can create solutions, the more you can prepare yourself, your community, the more you can create policies. So it is vital to problem solving. And so I want to empower people to know that it doesn't necessarily take only a massive movement of, civil rights. Like now it has to be personalized. It's the small things that people do in their own lives that they expose their children to, that they help younger people learn, that really will propel the change that we want to have. And it's constant. We're going to always have to teach history because it's ongoing. And so I wanted to create a book that could be a perfect supplement to Folded Map and the projects in between.
And I love the fact that, like you said, you're a constant problem solver and a person who looks for solutions, because, yeah, we can point out inequities from now until forever.
Yes.
But people want to know how to get involved. You said that in the very beginning. How can I help? And you don't know until you ask. Sometimes you feel like, I'm going to ask the wrong question. In this case, I don't think there's a wrong question if you're willing to try and you see somebody on the other side and you're having a human exchange with one another.
Yeah, and not feeling weird or guilty that you don't know. And what's funny is how segregation works is, even me saying that, people already have an idea of who I'm talking to. Like when I say people want to help, people, because segregation has programmed us, people automatically assume she's talking about white people. They don't even imagine, because of the programming, that, oh no, I'm also talking about people of color, Black people who want to actually help their own communities. Like, this is the craziness of segregation, how it just, puts a stereotype in your head, and we just fulfill it through the ways in which we're constantly programmed, which is the media, which is the lack of knowing specific histories. And so that's why it's always going to be important to learn and popularize history. It's not only to point out the inequities, but to learn how they came to be. Because the only way you can really solve a problem, no matter what it is if you learn how it happened. And so that's really important. That's why history always has to be a part of problem solving.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey there, Phenomenal listeners. It's Amy Boyle. If you're loving the stories and insights on the Speaking of Phenomenal podcast, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Good Pods. Your 5-star reviews help us reach even more people and keep bringing you great content. Thank you so much for your support and being a part of our phenomenal community. Now back to the show. In the place where we are right now and the projects that you've done, what advice would you offer our listeners for getting more involved? Obviously, read the book and get involved, but something they could do today. What's one question they could ask of themselves?
In this culture, in our country, like the instant gratification, whether it's social media, whether it's purchase, whether it's whatever it is, we have minimized the beauty and necessity of learning and talking because it doesn't feel like, oh, it's changing the world. That is also the same way that racism was able to be built into systems, is because the people who believe the same thing started talking to each other, and then they created ideas on how to institute policies and laws and things in their neighborhood that would represent what they believe. And so you cannot, just jump right into doing a thing that might make you feel good, but it's more important to learn and to expose yourself to the information connected to what it is you want to change. So then in the process of taking all of that information in, you will come up with your own ideas. And that's also what I learned with all of my projects. When people engage with my work, they instantly come up with ideas. Oftentimes it's, oh, have you ever thought about doing this with PhotoMap or this or this? But I never take offense to that because it's a new idea that they thought of. And even though they're directing it to me, I often turn it back to them, say, yes, I have, but I welcome you to do it, because it was map twins involved in my project who expanded my project themselves and created block twins. They introduced their neighbors to each other. And of course, it was like, oh, have you ever thought of doing block twins? I was like, I have not, but you could do it. So, that's what happens when you learn and get exposed to different ways of thinking and ideas. The synapses go off. You just start thinking about, maybe I could, and so that's why engaging with art, with history, with podcasts are really important, because it gives you that opportunity to listen and then to think and to have what you're paying attention to inspire you to do something. And that is powerful enough. And, people think, oh, you have to protest to make change or vote to make change. No, it's power in reflection and getting inspired to figure out what you can and what you want to do, because that is how movements get started. When individuals commit to dedicating themselves to learning more and doing something in their own network, because it will radiate out. And I just want people to feel empowered to know that that's the truth, that it doesn't have to be a specific action. But because people, need guidance, because we don't know, I did create the PhotoMap Action Kit. And the PhotoMap Action Kit is a self-guided way for people to hopefully find their own map twin, but more importantly, it's a way for them to introduce themselves to a neighborhood that's racially and economically different. Of course, there's some cute ways, like, go find a restaurant and go to. Unfortunately, in a lot of disinvested neighborhoods, you don't have the abundance of a corridor, entertainment corridor that has several restaurants. So the Action Kit helps people by giving a list of errands that I invite people to run in a neighborhood that's racially and economically different. Because that way people understand that they're doing the same thing that you're doing. It doesn't matter how different the neighborhood is. Everybody got to go to the grocery store. Everybody got to go to a bank. But if you run these errands, which include go buy an organic apple, go take out $20 at an ATM, go to a local library, you'll start to see how different sectors treat these neighborhoods. And then you will learn a lot more unconsciously, like, I get it now. So that is what the PhotoMap Action Kit is. And I always give that to people as a way to continue their learning that can definitely make you feel, like, okay, I am doing something. And you are. You're disrupting segregation by going to a neighborhood that is racially and economically different. And you're seeing how that neighborhood is treated. And trust me, when you do that, you will definitely get some ideas. What's not right, or what is nice, and how you might want to help. So I often tell people, go online and get the PhotoMap Action Kit.
Well, that will definitely be listed in our show notes. They always say, walk in someone else's shoes. We can figure these things out, right?
Yes. And this is how you do it. Go run some errands in another neighborhood that's different than yours.
Your work gets such wonderful attention. Tell us a little bit more about your Gordon Parks foundation fellowship and your solo show in New York. These are very exciting things.
Yes, actually, the show just closed like a few days ago. But it was my first solo photography exhibit at the Gordon Parks Foundation Gallery. It's the culminating photo exhibit for my 2024 fellowship as their Gordon Park Foundation Fellow. And that fellowship was just amazing because obviously for me being a young Black girl that had a camera, taking a photography class, I learned about Gordon Parks probably first and been fascinated by his work. Learning about his work validated me and what I like to shoot in a way that probably wouldn't have been validated because I definitely didn't learn about him in college. So I often thank God that I was exposed to him and his work in high school because that knowledge and confidence stayed with me in very challenging, homogenous photography classes in college. So to be able to become a fellow and to get access to his archives and be able to touch and look at his work in person, not only his printed work, but his negatives. It was just surreal. And it really helped me understand the role and importance of photography, not only in documenting history, but in being a platform to create change and help people see things different. And photography and film just does something that other traditional artistic mediums they can't and they won't, because it's something very different to capture a moment in time that is real, that's not a necessarily an artistic interpretation, and then also to be able to apply what you learn as a photographer who documents people and places, able to transfer those skills over to other mediums. Because Gordon Parks, he wrote a book. He was a filmmaker. He was a music composer. And so I definitely see the through line of his work. And photography was the foundation and a constant for him. But it's very easy to see how everything he learned being a documentary photographer and really a photojournalist were skills that he applied to creating the first Black film from a big production company that basically opened the door to a whole new movie genre called Blaxploitation. Like, he created Shaft. Like, that was, and then he wrote books. Like, he was really a Renaissance man. And so to be able to be a fellow was like a badge of honor, and it kind of gave me permission to continue to explore other mediums, and knowing that I'll still be a photographer. Like, I can enjoy dabbling and learning about other mediums and still be able to profess to the world that I'm a photographer. I am just completely honored to be a forever Gordon Parks Foundation Fellow, and to have their support of work that I continue to do.
For those who are listening, I wish, this isn't always a video podcast, but the way you lit up and you were talking about all of this, like, and I learned about this and I got part of that. It's visceral. Like, I feel it all over. It's just when we have those folks that inspire us even many years later, and you're like, because of you, I can. And it's like, wow, it's so incredible. So that leads me to a question that I ask my guests is, how would you define what is phenomenal or being phenomenal?
Wow. I would say being phenomenal is learning as much as you can about yourself always, to the point that you trust yourself, you give yourself grace, and you invest in yourself. To me, that is being phenomenal. I don't think anybody that we might label as phenomenal, I don't think they got to whatever it is they're doing without trusting and investing in themselves. And that might be a privilege for some, but it's all of our right to be able to allow ourselves the opportunity to get to know yourself enough to the point where you trust yourself and you want to invest in yourself. Because when you invest in yourself, especially when you are a good person, it will multiply into helping those around you. And so that's what I think being phenomenal is knowing as much as you can about yourself, being able to be honest and laugh about it and continue to evolve. Because without that, you won't get to experience all of the ways in which you are phenomenal. And even if you're good at one thing, it might be other things you're just as good at. Just because it's one thing you love and that you're great at, it doesn't mean that's the only thing. But you won't know until you trust yourself to try something else or explore other interests. So that's what I think being phenomenal is learning and loving yourself.
Perfect. Yes. As we wrap up, what is the thing that is lighting you up for this week and beyond?
All of the exciting plans that the Inglewood Arts Collective that I'm a co-founder of, that we have on our schedule to do in our neighborhood and beyond. I'm really excited and looking forward to us creating space for Greater Inglewood to be an arts and culture hub. So we have a lot of irons in the fire now, and today will be spent kind of getting them together. I'm really excited about the work and the public engagement that I'm doing part of Inglewood Arts Collective.
Fantastic. Everything will be listed in the show notes so that they could learn more about all the different projects that you're working on. And, and hopefully the listeners will reach out and share some thoughts on, what was just inspired. Because again, it's baby steps that are huge steps that actually cause collective change, to your point. So
exactly. That's how avalanches get going. Starts small and then it just builds and builds and builds. So yes, they can definitely find me online, TonikaJohnson.com. I live on Instagram. My handle is Tonika J. TON as in Nancy, IKAJ. And they can definitely hit me up if they have any questions or want to connect more.
Wonderful. Well, again, my thanks to you, and keep up all the fabulous work.
Thank you so much, Amy. It was so nice to talk to you.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Speaking of Phenomenal. Be sure to subscribe, rate, review, and even share the podcast, as well as stay tuned for more inspiring conversations. Remember, each and every one of you is capable of extraordinary things. Until next time, take care and remember, you are phenomenal.